Hello guys, welcome to my channel. On this lesson, we are going to review solving quadratic equations. And we have the standard form of quadratic equations, ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. So we are going to explore all the problems that we are going to solve on this slide. So there are various methods of solving quadratic equations depending on how the equation looks. So the first problem here has x squared equal to 9. And the method that's suitable for solving a problem like this is the square root method. On the second problem, we have to solve x squared minus 1/4 is equal to 0. And we can also say that this method, the square root method, will be best to solve a problem like this one. So we also have the zero product method, and then we also have the factoring method, which we're going to see on the next slide, and the quadratic formula method. All right, so let's go ahead and start with solving problems like this one. So to solve this problem, x squared equal to 9, we would take the square root of both sides. Take square roots of both sides. So we'll take square roots of both sides. So we will take square roots of both sides like this. Let me show you what we're doing. But then when we take the square roots of both sides, there is something that we have to remember to attach. To the value on the right hand side, which is the plus or minus sign. So meaning that we're going to write x squared is equal to plus or minus the square root of 9. That's how we read that. So this is called plus or minus. That's how you read it, okay? So now we are going to now use the square root to cancel the square because they are opposite operations, okay? All right, so then the square root of 9, we found out that it's going to be 3. So x equals to plus or minus 3. Done. So which means that your final answer will be positive 3 comma negative 3. This is how we represent the solutions to quadratic equations. Well, let me show you the reason why we always use plus or minus. So we know that this equation here, x squared equal to 9, has degree 2. So this exponent here is called the degree. So meaning that we should have two solutions for this equation, okay? If it has degree 3, degree 4, we would have more, okay? All right, so here, let me show you why we have plus or minus. All right, so let us consider this equation x squared is equal to 9. And what does x squared mean? X squared means x times x equals 9. Okay, that's the mean of x squared, right? So we're looking for a copy of the same number. All right, two of them, two copies of the same number. Okay, two copies of the same number to multiply to give 9. So we know that 3 times 3 equals 9, which means positive 3 times positive 3 equals 9. And we also know that negative 3 times negative 3 will also equal 9. See, so negative 3 times negative 3 will also equal 9. So it's positive 3 times positive 3. So because of that, we would say that every time you take the square root of both sides of an equation like that, you have to introduce the plus or minus sign. All right, so let's do problem number 2. For problem number 2, we have to solve x squared minus 1/4 equal to 0. One easy way to solve this problem here is to isolate the x squared. Okay, since this value here is like it's a real number and it's a constant number and has no variable in it, so we will just add it to both sides. So we will add 1/4 to both sides of the equation, and we're going to cross the 1/4 out of them out, and we're going to be left with x squared is equal to 0 plus 1/4 will be 1/4. Again, we're going to apply the square root method to solving this problem by taking the square roots of both sides. So meaning that we will take the square roots of both sides. And remember to put plus or minus on the right hand side. So we have x squared here, and we have 1/4 over here. So now, since we have a square and square roots are inverses of each other, so they will cross each other out. And you have x equal to plus or minus. And we had learned how to solve the square root of fractions. So what you can do here is to find the square root of 1 and divide it by the square root of 4. So you can do that. So meaning you can take the square root of 1 divided by the square root of 4, which is going to be equal to plus or minus the square root of 1 is 1 divided by the square root of 4 is 2. So meaning that your final answer would be x equals positive 1/2, which is just 1/2, comma negative 1/2. So which means that your solution set will be that. So x equal to 1 over 2 or negative 1 over 2. And we can always check these results to make sure that it satisfies the original equation. All right, so let's go to how to solve quadratic expressions or quadratic equations with zero product. So we can see that here we have x minus 2 times x plus 3 equals 0. So we know it's times because there is no operation between x minus 2 and x plus 3. So that means we have a multiplication there. So it's a product. So multiplication goes with products, okay? All right, so let's go and rewrite the equation so that we can see that this is multiplication. And the way we solve problems like this is different than if it was like x minus 2 plus x plus 3. So this is clearly addition. You just combine like terms and it will be easy to solve a problem like this one. So, but this is a zero product. So zero product because these two expressions multiply each other to give 0. And this is only possible if one of them is 0 or the other is 0, right? Because naturally you cannot, I mean, to multiply two numbers to get 0 means that this part here is either 0 or this part here is 0. That's the only way. For example, like 5 times 0 only can give 0. You cannot have 5 times 5 equals 0, right? That's not possible. So for us to be able to realize a 0 after multiplying two numbers, it means that one of the order has to be 0. So one or the other has to be 0. So the thinking is that if we look at x minus 2, maybe it's just x minus 2, that's 0. So we'll say x minus 2 equals 0, or it is x plus 3 that is equal to 0. So notice how we're using or, not and. So we don't want to do 0 times 0 equals 0 because this expression here in math, it's always undefined. It leads to an undefined situation. Okay, so this does not work. It doesn't work. So that's why you don't want to say both of them are 0. So you say it's just enough for one of them to be 0 to multiply the other to get 0. So this is how you set it up. So this is what you call the zero product principle. Zero product principle. Okay, so like if you have A times B equal to 0, it means that A is either 0 or B is what? 0. You get it? So that's what we're using here. So we're now going to solve the equation by adding 2 to both sides. So I would add 2 to both sides of the first part, the first equation, and subtract 3 from both sides of the second equation. So x will be equal to positive 2 here, okay? Or on the other hand, when we cross out this 3 here, x is going to be equal to negative 3. So therefore, we have the solution set. So x equal to positive 2 or negative 3. And you can actually write the negative part first. So it doesn't really matter which one you wrote first. So, or we can write the solution set as 2 comma negative 3, depending on what or you can replace that. You can switch the numbers around because you're solving for X variable. It's not X and Y. So there's no ordering here. You don't have to order your solution, okay? All right, so this is how you solve this. So we are going to solve the next problem here, number 2 here. It says X times X minus 2 equals 0. Again, applying the zero product principle, we will is either we set this to 0, or we'll set the second part, this part, x minus 1/2 to what? To 0. Okay, so now x equals 0 means x equals 0, so we don't have to do anything here. So we're done here. Done. But for this part here, we can solve for x. So we add 1/2 to both sides and cross the 1/2 out. So that means for this one here, second part, x is going to be equal to 1/2. So hence the solution to the quadratic equation x squared minus 1/4 equals 0. X times x minus 1/2 equal to 0. This problem here will be x equal to 0 or 1/2, which you can also write as 0 comma 1/2. This is not an ordered pair, okay? So yeah, we just found a way to represent this solution, the quadratic, okay? So this is how far we can go on this one. So we're gonna do the next slide and see what we have different. All right, here we can solve these problems here using the factoring method, okay? Factoring method is like one of the most interesting of all of them, okay? So we go through some series of steps to be able to factor a quadratic equation. So now any quadratic equation is in standard form is always written as ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So it's of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. And for this example here, we notice that we have the coefficient 1 here, which means a equals 1. And it exactly just matches with the standard. So b represents 2, and c will be negative 3. And 0 is 0. So that's how you interpret this, okay? All right, so if you let me, I would write the standard here. I would say that let's look at the standard form. Standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So you see. All right, so now if we match the standard form to the problem given to us here, we'll see that the problem given to us is 1x squared, because we don't have anything there. We'll just use 1 plus 2x, but then we have negative 3. It's not positive, it's negative 3. So now, meaning that if we match them, so we see that a is 1, all right, and then b is 2. B matches with 2. And C, positive C, yeah, matches with negative 3. That's what we have. And 0 is 0, so we don't worry about that one. So now, how do we factor this? So in order to factor this x squared plus 2x minus 3 equal to 0, like I said, there are different ways and tricks to do that. So you're going to make sure that you do not have any coefficient for x squared, because there are 3 terms here. This is the first term, second term, and the third term. So there are 3 terms: x squared, positive 2x, and negative 3. And then you want to make sure that you have all zeros. You have 0 on the right hand side, so the right hand side has to be 0. All right, for this to be a quadratic, but sometimes it may not be in standard form, and you have to rearrange it to get 0 on the right hand side. So now, since we know that the coefficient for x squared is 1, we would multiply 1 by the third term. So which means 1 times negative 3. So when we multiply that, it will give you the product. That's what you call product, okay? So it means that the product is going to be negative 3. This is what you call P, product. The next thing you're going to do is to do the sum. You see the number in the middle here is the sum, okay? So the sum is 2, positive 2. You're going to drag this number here. You're just interested in the numbers, okay? So for the second term here, that's where you find the sum, the coefficient of x. That's where you find the sum from. So sum equal 2. 2 is the sum, positive 2 is the sum. Now this is what you're going to do. So you are going to you're going to decompose this negative 3 versus this positive 2, such that when you multiply the two numbers, it will give negative 3. But when you add them up, it will give, when you add, because sum is addition, and then product is what? Multiplication. All right. So product is multiplication and sum is addition, right? So, okay, so what I'm going to do here is I need to decompose this negative 3 to two numbers so that when I multiply them, it will give negative 3. But when I add them, it will give positive 2. This is what I'm going to do. All right. So for example, we know that 3 times negative 1 equals negative 3. You see, by multiplying these two numbers, I get my negative 3 back, which is the product. But by adding, if I add them, if I add 3, and you should notice how I'm replacing the multiplication by addition sign. So when I multiply, I get negative 3, but when I add them, I get what? I get positive 2. So which means that the results that I'm going to use here will rely upon negative 3 and positive 2. So I'm going to use that to factor this equation. All right, so I know that my original equation was x squared plus 3x minus 3 equal to 0, right? So what I'm going to do here is, no, I think I made a mistake. So I am going to rewrite it again. So I had x squared plus 2x, that's what I was given, minus 3 equals 0 right from the beginning, right? This is what I had. And then from this trick here, from this uh, trick, I found out that if I multiply 3 and negative 1, I get negative 3, which is the product. And if I add them, I get positive 2. All right. So from here, I'm going to replace this 2x here, this 2x here, this 2x, this positive 2x, by this result. So instead of writing 2x, watch what I'm going to write. So I'm going to write x squared plus, now instead of writing 2x, I'm going to replace with 3x plus negative 1x. I need to use red color so that it can be very clear of what I'm doing here. See, 3, you use 3x because the middle term is 2x. So you will now use 3x, then plus negative 1x, and then you can go ahead and add and throw in your negative 3. Go ahead and throw in your negative 3 before you set that equal to 0. So I'm just replacing everything I have here by this point here, by this value here, I mean. Okay, this values. All right. So if that's good, we are going to be able to now factor. So this is all about a procedure and process. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to group this into different parts. I'm going to group x squared and 3x, and then I would group negative 1x and negative 3. Okay, so I have x squared plus 3x and what? Negative 1x and 3 equal to 0. So now I'm going to group these two here and factor this x variable out of that. So I'm going to do the reversed form of distributive properties. So I'm going to pull this x Okay, so it will be x going to x plus 3. Notice that if I multiply x times x, it will give x squared. X times 3 is going to be 3x. So I still have everything together. So here I have negative 1. So I'm going to use this negative 1. And I'm going to open parentheses and pull this negative 1 out here and write x. I'm not working on this part here. And instead of writing negative 3 here, I'll change that sign to positive 3 because I know that I'm doing the reversed form of the distributive property, so that if I distribute my negative 1 to x, it will give negative x back. And if I distribute my negative 1 times positive 3, it will give back my negative 3. So think about that. Equals 0. So now, if I do this right, this part here and this part here always coincide if I did it right. If I did not do it right, I probably might have x plus 3 here and x minus 3 here, and they would not coincide. So since they coincide, the parts that coincide, I'm going to bring them together. So x plus 3 coincide. So I'm just going to choose one of them. And then the parts that are outside the parentheses, I'm going to wrap them up and put them together. You see, and I make them into zero products. See how you can uh, is how you can actually do your factorization. So the process is tedious. It's tedious. I would not lie about that one. So, but then I hope that if you watch this video over and over, you'll be able to do this with me. So they I'll probably do some examples later. Okay, so here you have x plus 3 times x minus 1 equal to 0. So we're going to use zero product now to finish it off. And the way the zero product work is you take the first part, x plus 3, set it equal to 0, or the second part, x minus 1, you set that equal to 0. If you want, you can still keep your parentheses with them though. But if you want, you can leave them out. So x plus 3 equal to 0, you subtract 3 on both sides. But here you add 1 on both sides. And then here you're going to get x is equal to negative 3. Then the second part will be x equal to positive 1. So that means x is negative 3 or x is 1. So which means your solution will be x is negative 3, comma x is 1. So this will be your final solution. Okay, so it is tedious, but it is very interesting and it's fun. It helps you keep track of your details. You know, makes you think. Okay, so there might be easier ways to do this, but then this is one way I think if you learn this in this way, you know, you will be able to solve any problem of this nature. All right, let's do the formula method here now. So for the formula method, what we can do here is to just use the information we already have here. This is the quadratic formula here. The quadratic formula here is given to us. It is negative b, which means to calculate x, it will be negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So if you ask me, I would say this works like a calculator. So with this formula, you can calculate. Uh, you can always find the solution to any quadratic equation. And then I would like to say that you have to pay attention though to the operations, the plus and minus and square root and all of that. So in order to be able to use it right, okay. So here we see that for this problem here, we're going to have to need to figure out what A is, because you can see there's 2A here, there's 4A here. We're going to figure out what B is, we're going to figure out what C is, and so on and so forth. So the number attached to the x squared is 1, and that's your A. The number attached to the x value is your B. And the constant number, which does not have x variable, which is negative 3 in this case, so be careful not to use 3, is your C. So which means A is 1, B is positive 2, and C is negative 3. So now we're going to plug all of that into this equation. So let's go ahead and just apply like that. So it means that x will be equal to, so negative B goes in first. So negative B. So whatever B is, we know that A is 1, B equal 2, and C equal negative 3. Okay, so now if we start from B, which is the numerator. If b is 2, then negative b will be negative 2. So plus or minus the square root. So again, we're doing b. B is 2, and then we're going to do b squared next. That means 2 squared. Good. And minus, I'm just following the formula. Minus 4 times a is 1. So we're going to plug in 1 for a. We're going to keep going. So keep looking. And c is negative 3. So c is negative 3. I wanted you to see that. So c is negative 3. So I am going to do my parentheses. Maybe just use parentheses for everything. So I'm going to plug in negative 3 over there. So instead of using the multiplication symbol for, dot, and then I would use a parentheses just to be safe. So a is 1. Again, I'm going to use parentheses and just use 1 over there, or brackets, okay? So x equal to negative 2 plus or minus. I'm going to need to simplify everything in the square root symbol. So here I have 2 squared, which is going to be 2 times 2, and that's 4. Then I have minus 4 times 1 times negative 3. So we have a minus and negative sign. When we multiply everything together, it becomes positive. Okay, so 4 times 1 times 3, that's going to be 12. So this is 12. And we're going to divide it by 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, let's keep going. So x equals negative 2. I'm going to leave that alone. I need to do the square root first because we're still following the order of operation. And square root it works like exponents, so we need to figure that one out first. So whatever is in the square root, we need to work that out first. So 4 plus 12 is exactly 16 over 2. Meaning that we're going to have negative 2 plus or minus. We need to find the square root of 16, and that's 4. And we're going to divide by 2. Now, what this means is we're going to have to do two different things. So we're going to first add negative 2 and 4. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to add negative 2 and 4. And the second, we will subtract negative 2 and 4. Okay, so first, let's do the first part. Let's break it down like this and like that. So we're going to have negative 2 plus 4 over 2, the first. And second, we will do negative 2 minus, because of this minus right here, minus 4 over 2. All right, so if we work with the first one, we have negative 2 plus 2, that's going to be positive 2. That means x is equal to, we're going to get positive 2 first. Positive 2 divided by 2. That's the first part. And the second will be, we're going to get negative 2 here. Negative 2 minus 4, that's going to be negative 6. Negative 6 over 2. Notice that we're not multiplying, so we cannot get positive results. So it's an addition. So we're adding two negative numbers together. So we have 2 divided by 2 here, which is 1, and negative 6 divided by 2, which is negative 3. So these are your answers. And you can compare this result to what we got here. So we used a factoring method to solve the problem, and we got negative 3,1. And here we have used a formula method to also solve the problem, and we got 1, negative 3. So this is how far we can go with quadratic equations. But I hope in geometry you do not, uh, we do not. We do not solve problems, a lot of problems involving quadratics, but then for the advanced level and the honors geometry, we from time to time would take up challenging work, and then we introduce problems that will require you to use the quadratic formula methods of solving equations to complete the work. I hope this is a little helpful, and I look forward to posting more videos on solving quadratic equations in the future. Thank you for being part of this platform, and come back to watch more videos. Make sure to subscribe and comment and share. Thank you very much.